Now, imagine you are a young girl. You are only 14 years old. You are sitting in a golden carriage, far from home. You do not speak the language of the country you are entering. At the border, they take away your clothes. They take away your jewelry. They even take away your little dog. From this moment, you must forget who you were. You must become someone new. You must belong to a foreign court, a foreign people, a foreign king. Everyone is watching you. Everyone is judging you. And one day, this same crowd will scream for your death. This is the story of Marie Antoinette. Stay with me, because it is one of the most famous and most misunderstood stories in all of history. Our story begins in the year 1755, in the city of Vienna. Vienna was the capital of Austria, a powerful country in the heart of Europe. On a cold November day, a baby girl was born in a great palace. She was the youngest daughter of the Empress of Austria, a strong and serious woman named Maria Theresa. The little girl grew up surrounded by music, dancing, and beautiful things. She had many brothers and sisters, more than 10 of them. The palace was full of games and laughter. She was charming. She was pretty. She loved to play and dance. There is a lovely story from her childhood. One day, a little boy came to play music for the royal family. He was a musical genius, only 6 years old. His name was Mozart. The story says that young Mozart slipped on the smooth palace floor. The little princess helped him up, and the boy was so grateful that he said he would marry her one day. They were only children, of course. But it is a sweet picture. Two famous children playing together in a palace with no idea what the future would bring. But the princess was not a strong student. She did not enjoy books or long lessons. Her teachers often complained, but why study so hard? She was a princess. Her whole future was already decided for her. And that future was about to arrive much sooner than anyone expected. In those days, royal families did not marry for love. They married for power. Families used a marriage to join two countries together, to make peace, to build an alliance. An alliance means a friendship between two nations. Austria and France had been enemies for a very long time, so the two royal families made a plan. They would join their families through marriage. The young Austrian princess would marry the future king of France. She was just 14 years old. The boy she would marry was 15. His name was Louis. They had never met. In the spring of 1770, she left Austria forever. She traveled west in a long line of carriages toward her new life. The journey took many weeks. She passed through towns where crowds gathered to see their future queen. At the border between the two countries, there was a strange and difficult ceremony. The French wanted their new princess to arrive as a French girl, not an Austrian one. So they took away everything she had brought from home. They replaced her Austrian clothes with French ones. She had to say goodbye to her servants and her friends. She even had to leave her little dog behind. She was not allowed to keep anything from her old life. Can you imagine how frightening that must have been? A 14-year-old girl, alone, in a foreign land, with a new language and a new family. She even received a new name. She was no longer Maria Antonia of Austria. From this day, she was Marie Antoinette of France. Her wedding was a spectacular event. There were grand celebrations, music, and feasts that lasted for days. In Paris, the city planned a huge fireworks show to honor the young couple. But something went terribly wrong. A great crowd had gathered to watch. In the panic and the rush of so many people, many were hurt and many died. It was a tragedy. Later, some people would look back and call it a dark sign of things to come. But on that day, no one could know the future. Her new home was the Palace of Versailles. Versailles was the most magnificent palace in all of Europe. It had hundreds of rooms. It had golden walls and giant mirrors. It had beautiful gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of people lived and worked there. It looked like paradise. But life at Versailles was not easy. The French court had thousands of rules. There were rules for everything. There were rules for how to walk, how to eat, how to dress. Every morning, the young princess had to get dressed in front of a crowd of strangers. She could not even choose her own clothes in private. Important ladies handed her each piece, one by one, following strict tradition. Marie Antoinette found these rules cold and silly. She missed the warmth and freedom of her old home. And there was another problem. Her young husband, Louis, was shy and quiet. He loved hunting and making locks and keys. He was kind, but he was awkward. He did not know how to talk to his new wife. The two teenagers lived together, but they often felt like strangers. For years, the young couple had no children. In a royal family, this was a serious worry. Everyone expected a king and queen to have a son, a child who would rule after them. The whole court watched and waited. The whole country whispered. It was a heavy burden for two young people who were still learning how to be married. But slowly, over time, Louis and Marie Antoinette grew closer. They became true partners, and at last, they had children of their own. Then, in 1774, the old King of France died. Suddenly, everything changed. Louis became King Louis XVI, and Marie Antoinette, at just 18 years old, became the Queen of France. She was young. She was beautiful. She was now one of the most powerful women in the world. At first, the French people loved her. They cheered when they saw her. They admired her beauty and her style. Crowds gathered just to watch her pass. But Marie Antoinette did not yet know how to be a queen. She was still very young, and she wanted to enjoy her life. And so she did. The young queen loved parties. She loved music and dancing late into the night. She loved fashion above all. She wore enormous dresses and tall, towering hairstyles. She spent huge amounts of money on clothes, on jewels, and on games of chance. She built a private little world for herself in the gardens of Versailles. There, she could escape the strict rules of the court. To her, this was simply how a queen lived. But outside the palace walls, the world was very different, and it was beginning to change. Because while the queen danced, the people of France were suffering. France was deep in money trouble. The country had spent too much on wars. The harvests were bad, and the price of bread kept rising. Bread was the main food of poor people. When bread became too expensive, families went hungry. Mothers could not feed their children. Anger grew in the streets of Paris. Can you picture it? In one part of the city, people danced in golden rooms. In another part, children cried because there was no food. Two worlds, so close together, yet so far apart. That kind of difference cannot last forever. And the people began to look at their queen. They saw her beautiful dresses. They heard about her parties and her spending. They gave her a cruel nickname. They called her Madame Deficit, which meant the lady who wasted all the money. Whether this was fair or not, the queen became a symbol of everything that was wrong with France. There is something else the angry crowds did not see. As the years passed, Marie Antoinette began to change. She became a mother, and she loved her children deeply. She spent quiet hours with them, away from the noise of the court. She gave money to poor families and to children in need. She even spent less on herself than before. But it was too late. The people had already decided who she was, and once people decide what they believe, it is very hard to change their minds. There is a famous story that you may have heard. People say that the queen was once told the people had no bread. And they say she replied, "Then let them eat cake." It is one of the most famous sentences in history. But here is the truth. There is no real proof that she ever said it. Most historians today believe she never said those words at all. The story was probably invented by her enemies to make her look heartless. Yet the sentence stuck to her name forever. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes a person is remembered for words they never even spoke. Then came an event that hurt her name even more. A group of clever thieves used the Queen's name to steal an extremely expensive diamond necklace. Marie Antoinette had nothing to do with it. She was completely innocent, but the public did not believe her. The story made people think she was greedy and dishonest. Her good name was falling apart, even though she had done nothing wrong. The anger in France was growing into something far more dangerous, and soon it would explode. In the summer of 1789, the people of France rose up. This was the beginning of the French Revolution. A revolution is when the people of a country rise up to change who holds power. The poor and the hungry had finally had enough. They were tired of kings and queens living in gold while they starved. On the 14th of July, 1789, a huge crowd attacked a famous prison in Paris called the Bastille. The prison was a symbol of the king's power. Its fall shook the whole country. The king and queen were no longer safe. A few months later, thousands of angry women marched all the way to Versailles. They were hungry. They wanted bread. They surrounded the palace. They demanded that the royal family come to Paris, where the people could watch them. Marie Antoinette and her family had no choice. They left their golden palace, and they would never return. For 2 years, the king and queen lived in Paris, almost like prisoners. They were watched day and night. Marie Antoinette was no longer a carefree young woman. She had become a mother, and she was frightened for her children. She knew her family was in terrible danger. So they made a desperate plan. In June of 1791, the royal family tried to escape. In the dark of night, they slipped out of the city in disguise. They dressed as ordinary people. They tried to reach the eastern border, where friends were waiting to protect them. But they were caught. Someone recognized the king's face. The family was stopped in a small town called Varennes and brought back to Paris. This failed escape destroyed the last of the people's trust. Now the king and queen looked like traitors to their own country, and from this moment, there was no way back. The revolution grew darker and more violent. The people decided that France no longer needed a king. In 1792, France ended the monarchy. The royal family was thrown into a cold prison tower. In January of 1793, King Louis XVI was put to death. He was killed in front of a great crowd, using a machine called the guillotine. Marie Antoinette was now a widow, alone in prison with her children. Soon, even her young son was taken away from her. Her suffering was almost too great to imagine. She could sometimes hear him through the walls, but she could not hold him. For a mother, there is no pain greater than this. For months, she stayed in a small, damp cell. The once glamorous Queen of Versailles now wore plain, worn clothes. Her hair had turned white, though she was still a young woman. Yet through all of this, she did not break. She stayed calm. She stayed dignified. In October of 1793, Marie Antoinette stood trial. The people accused her of many terrible crimes. She defended herself with quiet courage. For 2 days, she answered their hard questions. She was calm. She was clear. Even her enemies were surprised by her strength. But the result had already been decided. She was sentenced to death. On the morning of the 16th of October, 1793, she was taken away. It was the same machine that had killed her husband. She was 37 years old. As she climbed the steps, she accidentally stepped on the foot of the executioner. And her very last words were simple and polite. "Pardon me, sir," she said. "I did not do it on purpose. Even at the very end, she did not lose her grace. And so the life of Marie Antoinette came gently to its close. Her story is not a simple one. She was not a perfect woman. She spent too much money. She did not understand the suffering of the poor, at least not until it was too late. But she was also not the monster her enemies described. She was a young girl, sent away from home at 14. She was asked to carry a weight far too heavy for her shoulders. Much of what people believed about her was simply not true. And here is what stays with me most, my friend. Marie Antoinette was placed in a foreign country where she did not speak the language. People watched her. People judged her. They laughed at her accent and her mistakes. She had to learn a new language and new customs. She had to learn a whole new way of life. And all the while, the world was waiting for her to fail. Does that feel familiar? Maybe English is not your first language. Maybe sometimes you feel like an outsider too. Maybe sometimes you feel that everyone is watching, waiting for you to make a mistake. I want you to remember something. Every new word you learn is a small act of courage. Every sentence you speak in English is a step into a new world. Marie Antoinette once took that same kind of step. But you have something she did not have. You have a choice. You chose to be here. You chose to learn. You chose to grow. And no one can take that quiet strength away from you. So keep going. Keep listening. Keep learning. There are many more stories waiting for you right here, and I will be here when you come back. Until next time, take care of yourself and never stop learning.